everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to create this rainy day card. It's a rather simple process and I hope you will enjoy it. Before we get started on the supply list though, I would like to take a moment and talk to you about our social media platforms. So we're on Facebook and we would love to have you become a member of both of our pages. The first page that we have is called the Bello's Design Lounge, and that's where we showcase all of the Lavinia products. The other page that we have is the Bello's Design a la carte. There we showcase all of the other products that Patty has in the store. So we'd really love to have you join us there in both of those groups. You'll see lots of great creations and get a lot of good inspiration from our members. There are other social media platforms that we are a part of. We are on Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And if you want to take a look in those areas, all you have to do once you get there is search this right here, hashtag Bello's Designs. Okay, so let's take a look at this card. I'm hoping that you can see a little bit of the shine. It's kind of hard with the lighting. Oh, there's a little bit on the boots. I hope you can see that there is some accents put on this card to kind of make it resemble a little bit of water. And a few of the raindrops, again, it's hard for me to tell if you can see the clear raindrops, but I'm going to show you how to do those too. Okay, so let's take a peek at all of the supplies that we're going to be using. So my card topper, and if you follow me, you know that this is my standard size. I always use a 4 1/4 inch by 5 3/4 inch heavyweight smooth white cardstock that is at least 270 GSM. GSM strictly means that the card is thick and can maintain a lot of liquid. So let's say you have a GSM of, I'm just going to pick a wild number, 100. That's not going to hold as much water as something that would be 300 GSM. So again, like I said, I like 270 and above because that way I never worry about any warping or pilling of my paper. Okay, next, my card base for that particular topper will measure 6 inches by 9 inches, and it's scored at 4 1/2 inches. And again, I use the same exact heavyweight paper for my card base. Now for the card, let me bring that back in. I will be using the Cardio Magic Mask called Raindrops. It's a fun mask, and it has several different raindrop sizes to choose from. This is actually the stencil, but when you purchase this, you will also get the pieces that have been cut out. Those are the masks. Okay, so we'll be using that. These are the stamps that I will be using. Cardio, if you are unfamiliar with, makes some of the most cutest stamps, and the quality of their stamps is amazing, and the price point I think is really good. So the one set that I'm going to be using a lot from is called the Umbrella Weather A7 stamp set. I will be using the umbrella, some of the raindrops, the little girl, and I will be using the large and the small puddle. Also for the sentiment, this is a wonderful sentiment pack. Actually, these are all the sentiments that come in this pack. This is called the Whatever the Weather stamp set. And the one that I'm going to be using says, when life gives you a rainy day, play in the puddles. I am using this small mouse. He comes from the Cardio Magical Christmas set. There's a lot of stamps in that set, but I just wanted to give you a few of the main ones, so if you're searching for it, you'll recognize it. Isn't he the cutest little critter? Cottontail capers, again, these are all cardio. I will be using this little guy up here. But when you purchase this set of stamps, look at how many different rabbits, how many different hairs you get, and all the different poses. They're absolutely darling. Dear Deer is a fun set. It comes with so many different deer, but all I'm using from this set today is that little tiny bird. The Majestic Sweethearts. These are very small sets, and they just come with sometimes only 4 or 5, maybe 6 small stamps that you use to build with. And a lot of times people like to use the acrylic pegs for stamping. But for today, I'm not going to be using a peg. I want to demonstrate that you can also use acrylic blocks. All right, that's it for the stamping. Now for the ink, I will be using through that stencil the Distress Oxide Hickory Smoke along with a blending brush. You use the tool that you are comfortable with when it comes to applying ink through a stencil. I will be stamping the images in VersaFine Clair Nocturne along with VersaFine Clair Verdant. Isn't that a beautiful green? It is so vibrant, one of my favorite colors. Other tools that I'll be using, like I said, I'm going to use an acrylic block today instead of the Majestic pegs, but that's something, if you're used to using the pegs, just go ahead and use those. Both work very well. I will be using a white pen for some highlighting. I'll use my bone folder to score the card. I am going to need a pair of scissors. I will be using the Sweet Poppy low-tack tape. And believe me, if you ever see those surveys when they ask what are some of the crafting products you can't live without, this is probably one of my top choices, the best tape going. It never tears my paper. I will be using an adhesive called Art Glitter Designer Dries Clear Adhesive. I've been using this for over a decade now, and it is my absolute favorite. I will be using Nuvo crystal drops, and these are the clear ones. I am going to be using my Misty stamping tool for some of the stamping. And I believe I have all of the supplies that I'm going to be using. If not, you can always check below this video and you will see all of the supplies used along with links directing you to those specifics. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to bring in my topper here along with my stencil. Now let's take a peek again at the card. I very randomly put these on here. The only one I was concerned about was the large one, trying to get it centered the best that I could. And if you notice, I tried to always darken the right side of each of the drops. Doesn't matter which side you pick. Personally, I just picked right for whatever reason, but I wanted to keep it consistent that all of the drops would have the darker edge on the right side. If you want to choose left, go right ahead and do that. That's your prerogative. Okay, so let's get started. Now I'm going to first center this large drop on my card. And to do so, I'm just lining up the base of this stencil with the base of my card. And then I'm going to take the Sweet Poppy tape and I'm going to mask off the areas where I do not want my brush to touch accidentally. I really just want to focus on this main drop. Okay, one more piece. Now, my blending brush has a lot of gray ink on it already, so I'm not I'm probably not going to have to apply much ink. So you're going to have to decide when you do this if you need to add a lot of ink to your brush. I am going to tap off just to be safe. And in a circular motion, I'm going to, oh, let me get that a little straighter. I'm looking at this, seeing that it's not, okay, that's better. Okay, let me move this to the side. I'm going to just start at the top and gradually work my way around the right side of this droplet. It's probably very hard for you to see, but the ink is extremely light. And that's okay, that's exactly what I want. I always like to start all of my blending or stenciling with an extremely light coat of ink. Now, I'm going to get a little more ink on the brush, tap off, come back in, and concentrate a little heavier on the right side of this drop. I want to give the appearance of this drop as if it were clear. Hence the reason I'm just trying to darken one side versus the other side. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to remove the stencil now so you can see how just the one side is really standing out and the other side is very light. And that's what I was going for. Now, moving on, I want to use these other droplets. I'm going to remove this tape, and I should be able to reuse some of that tape again. And I'm going to just use a dry cloth at this point to wipe off some of the ink so that my tape is going to stick. Now, as I said, the droplets are clear, so I'm not going to mask anything off from this large droplet, so that when I apply more droplets, I want them to be see-through. So let me start here on this side. And what I'm going to do is add this drop. And I'm going to mask off the areas that I do not want my brush to come in contact. Now this particular drop I'm going to make darker. And I want it to appear as if it's see-through. I want to be able to look through this drop and still see that large drop in the background. So removing my tape. All right, I can see through that and still see the large drop. Now I'm going to come in with another drop in this corner. And once again, I'm going to reuse the same tape. You'll see how many times I get to reuse this. And as long as your surface isn't wet, you can reuse this tape a few times. Okay, I'm not going to add any more ink this time to my brush. I'm just going to add a very light amount of color and remove. So see how that goes? Now I'm going to continue just to add all of these droplets randomly. I'm not picking any, there's no reason why I'm doing anything specific. I am just adding the drops here and there, masking off the areas in which I don't want that brush to come through. All right, I'm going to add a little ink. Remember, concentrating the most color on the right side of each droplet. All right, so you can see how I'm going to build up the droplets around this card. I'm going to go ahead and continue this on my own, and when it's finished, I'll come right back to you and show you the results. Okay, I have finished applying all of the water droplets randomly across the card topper. As you can see, some of them I just showed partial areas of the droplet itself. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to bring in my Misty now, and we're going to do some of the stamping. I'm going to line it up on this edge of my Misty so that you can see better as to what I am doing. Okay, what I'm going to start with first is adding the little girl. So let me grab my stamp, and I want to get her placed inside that large water droplet. And I think that looks about good. Now, the thing about stamping her, let's look at that original card. The boots are a different color than the silhouette stamp. So let me show you how I did that. So coming in with the VersaFine Clair, I'm going to stamp most of the little girl, trying to not hit the boots, which is going to be rather impossible to do. Now, what you could do is use a piece of that Sweet Poppy low tack tape and tape off that boot area if you wanted. But I'm just going to use my cloth. It's very lightly damp, very lightly. And there, I took a little bit too much off. Let me get that back in there. Sometimes, depending on the lighting, it's a little tough seeing when I'm filming. Let me get that black off of the boots. Now, if there's some black that doesn't come out crisp, let's say in her pants that she's wearing, I can always take a marker and add to that. So I'm not too worried if it's not real crisp on the edges. So I'll press her down, and I'm going to hope that I get a really nice transfer of ink the first time around. Right, I have a few light spots, but I'm going to let that go and use a marker, or better yet, let me show you what I like to use. Let me get my stamp cleared off. What I'm going to use is a fine detailing tool. Okay, this is usually used in car detailing, but I found it works pretty good in stamping. So what I'll do is I'm going to just ink up that small cotton bud, and I will stamp that bud onto the areas where it's not perfectly covered with the black. Now, you can use a very black pencil, you can use a black marker for this. Whatever works for you is fine, but I like using the exact same ink color when I'm filling in these light areas. Okay, now let me set that to the side. And before I go any further, we're going to jump ahead with that boot. And let me show you what I did with the boot. This I'm not real picky on. I'm going to grab the little girl again, and on a scrap piece of paper, the same paper that I'm using as my card base, I am going to ink up the lower half of the little one here. And that's the Verdance. That's that beautiful lime green. And I'm going to just stamp this onto my scrap. Now, all I need to do at this point, after I know it's good and dry, is fussy cut that pair of boots. And for the purpose of time, I already went ahead and fussy cut the pair of boots. Let me bring my card back in. And using, well, you know what, I'm not going to adhere these yet. Let's hang on. I got to get a puddle in first before I go any further. Sorry about that. Okay, let me grab the puddles. I'm going to start with the real long puddle first. And I'm going to place it close to the base of that droplet and close to the little girl. And I am going to actually stamp this in the hickory smoke. It's not often that I stamp with distress inks, but I only want a light color. I don't want this to be like the little girl. I don't want this to look like a silhouette. Again, let me grab the next puddle, which is the thinner, smaller one. And I'm just going to set this off to the right a little bit. Lining it up. And I'm going to use the Distress Oxide ink to stamp in. Oh, didn't get that quite. This is the best part of a MISTI, is when you don't get a good stamp, you can go back and redo it and get a better image. I'm just wiping my stamps off with a damp rag. Okay, now that I have my puddle established, I will go ahead and stamp the umbrella next. And I want the handle to appear as if she is holding it in her hand. So I'm going to align that. Get that magnet out of the way. Align that in her hand, just like so. Stamping again in the Nocturne. This will give a nice crisp image. That's why the Nocturne is so nice to use. Okay, let's get that in place. There we go. Looks like she's holding the umbrella now. And next, I'm going to grab that wee little bird from the Dear set, and I'm going to have him land right on top of her umbrella. He is such a tiny stamp. I always am so afraid I'm going to lose him. So I'm extra careful when I use this little guy. There, that came out very good. And his little tiny legs are exactly where they need to be. Now, if by chance those legs didn't touch that umbrella, I would just take a fine marker and I would come in and just draw the legs so that it would be touching the umbrella. All right, I'm going to finish off the critters at this point. And let me grab my little guys here. Okay, here's the rabbit. And I'm going to place him near that puddle in the back. Okay, just some nice taps of the ink, pressing it firmly into place. There we go. And as I feared, my little mouse ran off. So let me grab another one. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pause and come right back about that. Little bugger was right where I left him. Figures. Okay, let me get him in place, and then we'll move on. Like I said, the cardio critters are, I think, the cutest ones that I have in my stash, but I also have to keep in mind how tiny they are and really watch where I place them. I seriously would have cried if I would have lost this one. I swear this is the mouse I use more often than not. Okay, let me get a nicer image on there. There, that's so much better. Okay, moving on, finally. Let me show you the rest of the card. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take those fussy cut boots, and I am going to get them aligned where they need to be. I'm not using a lot of adhesive because I don't want it to ooze. And I'm just going to get that lined up where they need to be. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. All right, now what I'm going to do is come in and show you how I decorated the little umbrella. So I have two of these teeny tiny, and I mean these are teeny tiny stamps, but I absolutely love them. I'm going to start with the heart first, and I am using a longer acrylic block. Now you could use a smaller one if you had it, but lately I've been using this size because I feel as if I have a lot of control. I'm also going to grab a piece of the Sweet Poppy tape to use to block. And the Verdant, again, Verdant ink. And I'm going to come in and randomly stamp some hearts onto this umbrella. And believe me, very random. There's no rhyme or reason as to why I am stamping as I am. Let me grab that piece of tape. And I'm just going to block off areas as I work around the umbrella. Even in these small areas, I want to get bits and pieces of this umbrella. Like I said, I find I have more control with this block than I do any other at this moment in time. Who knows? Maybe it's just me, but this is what's working. Okay, I'm even going to squeeze a little bit of a heart in this upper area. Okay, that's good enough for me. Just a little bit of green. And then I want a piece of the heart sticking out here. All right, so let me remove that. So as you can see, I have it kind of all over the umbrella itself. Let me clean that off, and I'm going to come in and do the same exact thing with that tiny little flower. Same ink color. I'm going to grab a new piece of tape so that I can block off areas as needed. Now my Verdant is extremely wet, so I have to be careful not to press too hard. Getting the ink and pressing it onto my paper because I don't want to make a big mess, and I want you to be able to tell that this is a flower and not just a big splodge of ink. I don't have to cover too much of this area right now. Oh, this one I will. Okay, just to get a little bit there. And I think I'm going to get a little flower over here. All right, that's going to suffice. All right, let me get this cleaned off, set to the side. All right, now the last thing I need to do is to come in and add all of those raindrops. And I am going to use that same acrylic block along with the raindrops that come in the stamp set itself. Now, I don't know if you picked up on it, but I do have a kind of a smudge here, and I don't know if that was from a finger or my brush, but I'm going to take care of that smudge now. I am going to, again, stamp in the Distress Oxide. And I'm going to put my first set of raindrops right over that to cover that up. And chances are most people won't notice that. I'm going to randomly place these stamps, wiping off my stamps in between. Now that was a set of 3 stamps. This is another set of 3, but they are so teeny tiny. What I like about stamping in Distress Oxides is it doesn't give a well-defined look. It's kind of watercolory looking almost. It's definitely different than stamping with the VersaFine Clair. All right, coming in now with the single droplet, I'm going to go ahead and just, again, very randomly press these in and around the area. Okay, and then there is still one more that is actually the largest of the water drops. So let me get those in and around. Let me get one more big one over here. Okay, I think I'll call it quits on that. Now, before I go any further, I want to get my sentiment in place. And to do that, I'm going to bring my Misty back in. And let me get this lined up so that you can see it. And I'm going to try to center this and get it as straight as possible. Now I do have a neat little grid that I like to use at times. And this grid makes it real easy for lining up so that I know that I have a straight image. So let me get that lined up. 1, 2, let me see here. Sorry about this. I'm really getting a bad reflection tonight from the lighting. Okay, I think that's good. So what I'll do is pick that up. Then I'll get my magnets back into place. And this time I want a nice crisp image, so I'm going to use the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. Give a nice press. I'm going to do that one more time. I want it to be just a tad bit darker. There, that's much better. A quick wipe of my stamp. And let's finish this off. Let me show you what I did with the white marker. Yes, the white marker. So using the white marker, all I'm going to do is come in and highlight the water droplets. And to do so, I'm just doing a real fine line of white. I'm sticking on that right edge again. I don't want to mix this up because this white is to represent a bit of a highlight, a bit of a reflection. Now, I always turn my paper as I work because I let the artwork come to me, not me go to the artwork. So let me get those there. And even the little raindrops that I used, I'm going to highlight some of those. Even though this is white on white, it still will stand out enough that it'll create some interest. All right, let me spin this around. Now, if I don't think it's white enough, I can go back in and add another layer, and that definitely will brighten up those areas. Okay, I don't know how well the camera's picking this up. I sure hope it is, though. I'm also going to kind of highlight some of the puddle marks, some of the ripples in the water with this white pen. You know, again, you do you on the highlighting. You know, you do as much as you want to do. Some people don't do it at all, and that's just fine. I'm going to highlight a little bit of her hair, not all of it, just a little bit. And then I'm going to whiten the circles inside these little flowers to give them just a little bit of a pop. You can see it real well when it's in the gray area. I'll pick it up and let you see. And then I'm not sure if you can pick up on it, but those hearts have some little stripes in them. So I'm going to just go ahead and add a few white stripes to highlight those areas. Something you can or you don't have to do. Again, it's up to you how much you want to do. Okay, I'm happy with that. The last thing I have to do here is mount this to my card base. I am only going to show you what it will look like mounted, because I want to add those white clear drops on here, and I'm not going to be able to actually finish the card by mounting it when that's wet. I don't want to ruin any of the crystal drops that I'm going to put on. So you're going to have to just use your imagination and know that this is what it looks like when it's finished. So let me show you how I use the Nuvo clear drops. First, I'm going to simply fill in the boots completely. Let's look at the original. Hopefully you can see a little bit of that shine. Now this is dried, I think it's been 2 days now since I've done this. When I apply this now, it is going to be very milky looking. It's not going to be clear. So I recommend you let it sit overnight at least for it to dry. As you can see, I'm rubbing this. This kind of warms it. Now, it's not really cold anymore, but it's just a habit I've gotten into is rolling the drops, kind of warming them up. And then I'm going to actually just use this point like a paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint this in the areas that I want the clear to appear. Okay, it's very easy to do. You don't want to push hard and you don't want to squeeze hard because you don't want a great big blob coming out. You just want enough that you can move around with the tip. And I do try to even it out. I don't want any low spots. So I'm just tapping in areas, moving the clear drop in the area. So as you can see, it's a little bit cloudy, but it will dry perfectly clear. Now to make the raindrops, what I'm going to do is I want them to appear just like a regular raindrop. So I'm going to work upside down, and I'll explain why. My first drop will be the biggest part, like the base of the raindrop. I put it down and then I pull it. I put it down and pull. And this makes a perfect raindrop. So I'm squirting a drop down and then I'm pulling it. I'm not adding more once that drops down. I'm just dragging through that drop. Okay, let me see if I pick this up. I hope you can see there's a drop here. There's one there. There's one there. I hope you can see a little bit of the shine. Now I just want to add a couple more, hoping not to drag my arm through the ones I've already done. Drop and pull, drop and pull. They're all not going to be perfect, but you know what? I bet you raindrops aren't all perfect either. Okay, so let's take a peek. Let me give you an up close and personal. See how milky that is? That'll be crystal clear by tomorrow morning. Same thing with the drops that I added. So let me show you. There's the original, and here's the one we did today. Pretty similar. Again, you can never make them exactly the same because the pressure today I used on my brush was different than what I did a few days ago when I made the original card. But I hope this gives you an idea of one way that you can use that beautiful stencil. I absolutely love the raindrops. I think it has a lot of potential and a lot of fun. If you decide to give this a go, first of all, have fun when you do it. Secondly, make sure you share it in our groups and tag me because I'd love to see what you create with the raindrops. Hey, thanks again, guys, for always watching and being so kind in your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our Facebook pages, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.